Great.
Nice, so nice to see you all here. So we're going to talk about Brazilian politics today. And as you probably know, we're in a very delicate and complicated moment right now. We are just a few days, how many days? 4 days before the national presidential election. And we're in between very extremes. So that's why we put this together. I'm going to give you a little summary of how elections work in Brazil and Brazil right now, so you can understand how Brazilians are voting and what they're thinking when they're voting. And then after that, here's the Portuguese team. We're all the Portuguese team right here. And hey, Chess. And we're gonna each TA is gonna be presenting one candidate, talking a little bit about it, so you guys can understand where they stand. Please come in, Chess. There's a chair right there, and there's this high one too. Okay, so just start. So in Brazil, we have a majoritarian vote. We have a popular direct vote. So a little bit different than the United States, okay? We do not have an electoral college. The population votes and the majority wins. We have a mandatory voting, which means we have to go and vote, every single one of us. And if Brazilians don't vote, we pay a fine. Whenever you have to apply for a job, for example, you have to show documentation that you voted in the last 5 elections. So voting in Brazil is a big deal. We all do it, and we all have to. You cannot leave the country, for example. Thank you, Andrea, for reminding me. You cannot leave the country if you don't have those statements that you vote. I'm doing like this because it's a very small piece of paper. And you have to prove that you have been voting in the past elections. And it's a multi-party system. What does that mean? It means we have a ton of parties, okay? In the United States, you have 2 major parties. In Brazil, we have a lot of them. We have around 30 candidates, okay? They go all the way from extreme right to extreme left. And a lot of them are in the middle, as you can imagine. October 7th, so elections are always on Sundays. Isn't that great? So everybody can actually go, right? You don't have to skip work, you actually have to go. On Sundays, and I put something there just because it's interesting. We actually, we are not like the United States or New Mexico, no, we sell alcohol every day of the year. There's nothing about Sundays. But actually, on election day, no alcohol can be served or sold in any parts of the country. Okay? Let's see. Drink some water. This is specific election, so Sunday Brazilians will be voting for 6 spots, 6 seats. Okay? So we have a presidential seat, governor according to your state, and then we have 2 legislative seats, which is one is in the Câmara dos Deputados, which again, just like United States, we have 2 houses in the Congress, okay? So we vote for 2 senators and 2 deputados, we call them, okay? Representatives. We vote for one again, we vote for 1 federal, 1 local. This is the fun part, okay? So we have 2 election days, hopefully, okay? So, for president and governor, so for the executive seats, they need the majority of votes to get elected. So, we do a first round, where you have 30 candidates, and we're going to vote for all of them. And then, after that, we end up with 2 candidates who achieve more votes, and then we got a second round. And then it works very similar than the US, right? You vote for one of the 2. I put an observation there. a candidate can win in the first round whenever he has more votes than all the other candidates combined. So that can happen, and it's unlikely to happen in this election, but it could. In our debate after, we can talk a little more about it. Okay. So, let's talk about Brazilian representation, which is very important, and it looks somehow good, I would think, this year. So, women representation actually went down in this election, but we have one candidate, one woman running for the executive office. So, that's very relevant. It's Marina. Who's going to talk about Marina, guys? Sure. Oh, no one. Oh, Andressa.
Is that unheard of?
What?
Is that unheard of, or?
Is that unheard of? We're going to get there. No, it's not unheard of. Okay, so indigenous representation actually went up, and we have one vice president. We're going to hear about it too with André. That is indigenous. And a black. Okay, a black representation is actually going up too, 46%. Which in a country, as you know, Brazil has around 50% of people consider themselves black or pardos. So it's definitely not yet there, but it's looking a lot better than past years, okay? And those are candidates, guys, of course, not elected officials, which this number should drop, right? So we talk about Brazil as a multi-party system, right? But these elections are a little tricky. We see bipolarization a lot, okay? So we have the petismo and the antipetismo. PT means the Labor Party of Brazil, Partido dos Trabalhadores. And then you have the people against it, which they consider themselves a lot of times antipetista. So before being from another party, they are anti-PT, okay? Just to give you a background, we had in the past years, well, not only in the past years, we only had these two PT presidents in charge of the country. Lula, which you probably heard about, from 2003 to 2011, and Dilma, 2011 and 16. So there goes, a woman. Okay? What happened to Dilma? Impeached. So the only woman in Brazil got impeached. Right? That says a lot about the country. Well, let's keep going. So, background on PT to understand the elections and to understand the anti-PT. Okay? PT is considered by a lot of populist party. In 2010, when Lula ended his term, he actually closed the term with 87. Data says that 37 million people were pulled out of poverty in 10 years. So only there you understand the popularity of Lula and PT, okay? It is a government that, it is a type of government, a party that focused on eradicating poverty. However, PT is not only roses, right? PT is well known for its corruption scandals. So we had a mensalão that came out, which was when the executive paid the Congress, okay? So they were buying legislative vote. There was a huge corruption scandal that came out, money laundering, if you guys heard about it, Lava Jato, okay? It's kind of like the Breaking Bad where they had the huge car wash, right? And they were laundering money. That was actually true in Brazil, okay? In August, I think, yeah, in the beginning of August, Haddad takes over as the Labor Party candidate instead of Lula. So again, Lula was gonna, I forgot one of the, sorry, I pulled. So Lula was gonna run over again, okay, as the candidate for PT. Things were looking really good for him. But then, Lula was jailed, okay, in April. And he's in jail right now, he cannot run. So Haddad is his best man right now, right? His replacement. Is corruption exclusive to PT? We have, in this election, 55 defendants running. So people are actually being accused of corruption and still running for offices. Okay? In Brazil, you cannot run for office if you are proved to be guilty, but if you are in the process of, you can. Okay? So this is what's happening, and this is why they judged Lula so fast and put him in jail. Okay? Including in the executive. So, for example, Bolsonaro, which Kelly is going to talk to us about, he has, and I didn't know how to write this in English, but
been accused of rape?
Not accused of rape, no, accused of motivating rape or talking about rape.
Instigating?
Okay? Instigating rape, exactly, that's it. Yes. Okay, and racism, straight racism. And now coming another candidate of corruption in the same scandal. Oh really, Bolsonaro? Okay, okay. So, what a mess, right? Okay, so let's think about Brazil in the last years to understand how we're voting before knowing the candidates. So, economy. Okay, we have huge problems in the economy. We have a recession. Brazil is not growing for the past 5 trimesters. Increase in inflation and unemployment. Unemployment and inflation has been rising. Poverty and urban violence. I'm going to show you some data here. So, for example, unemployment. And if you can see, I wish I was closer to there, but so if you see in the PT, during the PT years, so you see this? So what's happening to unemployment? Dropping, right? Dropping, everyone's happy. And then you have 2003, starts to rise again. And then you have Dilma in power, and then what happened to Dilma? Impeached, right? Because people are not happy, of course. And again, here, poverty. You see exactly the same trend. You see it? So dropping, and then you see a rise. Okay? Violence is a huge thing. Violence is a huge thing nowadays in Brazil. Security, fear, threat perception. Okay? And politicians know how to use that very well, as you probably know. So, this is one of the charts you most see in Brazil. Okay? Oh my God. Right? It has been rising, and homicide rates are increasing. However, you have to think about those charts as it goes along population increase, okay? So it doesn't take that into consideration. From the 80s to 2000s, you have a huge population increase. So you cannot consider the same homicide rate, right? The same homicide numbers. These are total numbers, I'm sorry. Lack of reporting. What was going on in the 70s and 80s in Brazil? Do you think it was a lot of reporting of murders?
Of course it was.
Right? Not really, right? No. Around 2000s, right there, when you see the peak also, you have it's a rolled trend. You have the drug war starting. So you do have a lot of countries in Latin America, which you know are the sources, having an increase of violence, okay? And also what happened in Brazil in the last years is that Brazilian violence broke segregation. So if Brazil violence was concentrated in favelas and poor populations, now the violence it's right beside middle class. You know, it's everywhere. And of course it follows poverty, right? So again, you see there, look, a decrease, a little drop in the beginning of the 2000s, and then you see an increase again, right? And now we have, so what happened now? We have an increase in poverty, increase in employment, so we're also going to see an increase of violence. Does that make sense?
And the population increase doesn't help that either. Is it still going up?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not like you guys. I think the United States is stable, right? At one point, or Europe. Yeah. We're not. Yeah. We are on the rise, definitely. So just for you to have an idea, the national average per 10 people. In United States is around, oh, I forgot those numbers right there. It's around 14, is that it? 13, 14? In Brazil, the national average is 26. So it is very high, but if you consider, it goes along the second countries right there, El Salvador, Jamaica, Venezuela, Guatemala, Colombia, Brazil. However, the thing is, local numbers are very high. So if you look Brazil locally, those numbers go insanely up. So for example, in Marcelo City, where is Marcelo? Marcelo is from Fortaleza. Fortaleza, the number is 46, okay? So it's a very high number. So of course, all those things increase threat perception, right? Insecurity, threat perception, and make people vote for certain types of candidates.
So the urban areas, the more congested, the more crime.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah. Okay, so just before we know the candidates, I don't have a call here, huh? Before we know the candidates, let me just put it a little bit for you guys. So we have Jair Bolsonaro growing and growing and growing and growing and growing since the beginning, okay? Consistently growing. This is from yesterday, 32, okay? 32%. And then we have second one, Haddad, which is PT, okay? So you do have, you see, PT and anti-PT. Are people voting for Bolsonaro or are people voting anti-PT? I don't know, let's talk about it after, okay? So this is what we have right now, and this is the simulation for the second round, okay? And we see Bolsonaro losing it, and we see the other candidates rising. Okay, my part is done.
You mean they've already voted?
I'm sorry, say it again?
They've already voted?
No, this is a pool.
Okay, opinion.
Okay? Sorry, public opinion. Sorry, I didn't say that, you're right. Okay? So this is a public opinion from yesterday. They get released every day, almost on a daily basis. Okay. Who are we starting with? Oh, let's start from the bottom up, okay? Let's start with Andre.
So, my candidate isn't even there because Bold, he doesn't show up because I think he has 1% or like less than 1% of the vote intention. But the reason why I chose him because he's very significant for the whole perspective of the left parties in Brazil, especially because the party that he's from, Boulos, Guilherme Boulos, is a party that comes from PT. So there is this political dissension in PT, and they decided to found this party called Socialism and Liberty Party. And so because during PT years, there were so many moves toward the center or to the right that some people inside of PT, they felt like they were no longer being a leftist party. So they decided to found this new party, and they were more connected to human rights agenda, to no normative people agenda, to black women, black population, to indigenous people, to the quilombolas protection. Quilombola is like the historical places where enslaved people fled in Brazil, and they founded these quilombos that were places in which they could be protected in, having their own life, their own structure against the oppression that they were living. So PSOL, that is this party that Guilherme Boulos, Guilherme Boulos, it's important to say that he is the person that founded and worked together with let me see if I can remember the name, is National Movement for Homeless Workers. So housing is a huge problem in Brazil. So there are so many people with so much money, with so many houses, with so many properties, and so many people that have nowhere to live. And people that are workers, people that that are working class, they are now like they were now like people that were in a homeless condition because they actually were workers. They had jobs, but they had nowhere to live. So they founded this movement, the homeless workers movement, and they and they kind of seized. They would take away or take over some buildings that were closed. There were like buildings with apartments and houses, but nobody living in there. So Guilherme Boulos actually was one of the founders of this movement to take over these places in urban cities, because it's different of the other movement called landless movement in Brazil that tries to take lands of those huge landowners. But this movement tries to take places in the cities. And his vice president is called Sônia Guajajara. She's a Brazilian native Brazilian, and she also has this whole perspective on human rights protection for indigenous population, and also protecting quilombolas, protecting women's rights. It's important to say, Kelly of course is going to mention that because you're going to talk about Bolsonaro, that Bolsonaro is the person that says, that overtly says that women deserve to have a lower salary because they get pregnant, and that's problematic in his view for the job market. But Sônia Guajajara and Guilherme Boulos are the direct opposition to it, saying that women's rights are human rights, women should have equal rights. He also is the candidate that more overtly supports the gay LGBT population, and trying to foment a more egalitarian environment in the country. So that's pretty much my thing. Unfortunately, he's not among the seventh more with the most vote intention in the country right now at the moment in Brazil. But I mean, he's very significant because he has great influence on the leftist position, because there are only 3 candidates that are more related to the Brazilian left, or what we call Brazilian socialism. So that's pretty much this. Any questions with Guilherme Boulos? And
Would his party be considered more liberal than the PT, or is it like on the same spectrum of liberalism?
I think I would consider it more liberal than the PT, yes, because especially because they never ruled, they never had an executive position, so therefore they had never made any alliances with center parties or right parties, so they call more radical in this sense. Any other questions?
Andrea, would you repeat his name, please?
Guilherme Boulos. Boulos, yes. And her name, his vice candidate is called Sônia Guajajara.
Okay, let's go to Andressa.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's fine. I have a question about the population of indigenous people in Brazil. What is the population? How big is the community of indigenous people?
When it comes to numbers, I can actually say, but I know that there was a decimation of rights because.
It's 0.6 of the population.
Thank you, Marina.
Percent of the population.
Yeah.
But what we know that before 1500 we had 2,000 native Brazilian languages, and nowadays we only have like 195, and the numbers are dropping. And Bolsonaro also overtly says that Amazonia should be attacked because this whole amount of land is not being used for anything. So and the indigenous land also should be used because they need to be used in a more productive perspective to the country.
Wait, who?
Bolsonaro, the person that Cal is going to present.
The guy leading.
The guy that's
Why is he leading?
Yeah.
Well,
That's a great question.
we'll discuss
That's a
more
great
about it.
question.
Okay. He's so anti-society. I mean, why is he leading?
Should be the front runner.
Okay. Okay.
Real quick,
So what happens to Brazilians who live abroad, like you guys? How do you guys vote? Or how do you
Yeah,
guys-
well, what happened to us is that we can vote, but we need to go to the nearest embassy. And for us that we are living here in New Mexico, we need to go to Houston. This is the closest place that we can go to vote.
And if you don't do this, or if you allow me, when we go back to Brazil, we have to try to explain why we couldn't vote. And if you cannot explain, if they don't accept the explanation, we have to pay a fine anyway.
How
Yeah.
much is the fine?
Very expensive. Very expensive. It is less than $1.
Saying that.
It is less than $1. Very expensive.
It's just the whole convenience.
Yeah.
You cannot even get a job if you don't pay those fines.
Yeah. And I think it was, I don't remember if it was Marcelo or Alex that told us at Bate-Papo that you have a time to go there when we are back to Brazil. It is 1 month, right? So I'm going to present very quickly about Marina. Well, now we have 2 women that are trying to be the president of Brazil, but the other one has even less votes than Boulos. And Marina has only 4% right now. And Marina is a very known politician in Brazil. She has a very long career there. She has been under many different representative positions, state representative, federal representative, and the same for her vice president, Eduardo Jorge, that I will tell you now. So Marina was born in Acre. She learned how to read and write when she was only 16 years old. She used it to work as a rubber tapper, and she believes that education is one of the main bases for the country, and it can change people's life, and it changed her life because she was able to have this very long experience political life. And she also worked as a Minister of Environment in 2003 when the power of Lula started in his first mandate. And she left PT in 2007 and affiliated herself to PV. PV is Partido Verde, the Green Party. They are still left, but they have a lot more concerns about the environment. And she decided to establish her own party that is called Sustainability Net. In 2015, it was the first time that she was able to have politicians on her party because the party itself was established in 2013, a couple of years after she had some disagreements with PV as well. And last year, she had disagreement inside her new party. So some of the people that were there are not there anymore. And now she's not seen as a very strong leader because she could not manage her own party in the beginning. So people don't have a lot of confidence on her as a leader considering this aspect. And her vice president is Eduardo Jorge. Eduardo Jorge was also he's from PV, and he was chosen by the Green Party to be the representative and do a co-colligation, like a union between parties that is very common in Brazil. So, although Marina had problems with PV and decided to found her own party called Rede, she still needs PV to have all these colligations and connections. And Eduardo Jorge also has a very long trajectory as a politician in Brazil as well. And he was the president's candidate for PV in Brazil in 2014 and got only 0.61% of the votes. And I found very interesting the material that Marina has, her directrices, her guidance for her possible candidacy. And I decided to bring it for you guys, just for you to have a look. It is her and her vice president. And this is the way that I translate the title: Brazil, Fair, Ethic, Prosperous, and Sustainable. And it is very long, it is almost 50 pages. And I decided to highlight some points that I think dialogue with my ideas, although I would not vote for her if I would vote. But she has a lot of ideas that I think would be very good for Brazil, but she needs to face many other
problems before she can get it. And one of them is strengthen democracy and rescue the faith in politics, based in everything that Marina said. I think it makes a lot of sense. Education as a right and groundwork towards development, basic sanitation and water safety, human rights and full citizenship, animal welfare, protagonism in public safety and prevent of violence, science, technology, and innovation. I think it's very important to highlight this one because we had some laws that were approved recently in Brazil. So the investments for education, healthy, and something more, you guys can help me if you want. Education, health, and I cannot remember more. It is frozen for 21 years, 20 years? 20 years. So now many education programs have their fund cut. So now we don't have investment for this. Preserving the future economics through sustainability, innovation, and employment. Prioritize ecotourism and tourism promoted by local communities as alternatives to a sustainable development. And conduct structural reforms that support our transformation. Some of these points for me are also a bit problematic, so that's why I would like you to have an idea and to discuss after with everybody. And that's all I have for you guys. Do you have any questions?
Let's
About
leave the
Marina?
questions for the end.
Okay.
Let's try
Great.
to, guys, let's try 3 minutes.
Done.
And then,
I was gonna quickly ask, was that Maria's guidelines and priorities? Is that what she's campaigning for?
Yes, and she has a list with more than 50. I just got 10.
That's comprehensive.
Hello guys, my name is Marcelo, nice to meet you all. I'm going to talk about Ciro Gomes. He is the 3rd place in Brazil right now. Ciro Gomes calls himself as an alternative from petistas and anti-petistas. So right now in Brazil, what some people may consider, people who are trying to put PT in the government, they don't like it because they call PT as a corrupted party, right? And people who are trying to put Bolsonaro in the government, they don't like it because they are racist, homophobic, and stuff like that. And so Ciro Gomes calls himself as an alternative. So he always says that he is not corrupted, that his life, he has more than 35 years of political life. So he has been a governor from my state, Ceará, in the northeast of Brazil. So he has been a governor of the state. He has been a mayor of the capital of the state. He has been a mayor of the 2nd biggest city of the state. He has been the only thing he didn't achieve was being a president and a senator. These are the only ones he didn't achieve. All the rest ones he got. Okay. He has also been minister from Itamar Franco, former president of Brazil. So he was the treasury minister. And from Lula, he was the national integration minister. So, as you can see, he has a lot of political experience. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. We don't know what really it means in Brazil right now. But he calls himself as the alternative. One of his major aspects is trying to be against Bolsonaro. So every time he speaks, he says, that guy is homophobic, that guy is racist. Come on, Brazil, let's move, let's change our votes. So that's all his speeches is about that. And also he tries to, And also he tries to say that let's also not go back to what happened to Brazil. Brazil was incredible. He was one of Lula's ministers. So he's not completely against Lula, okay? He was actually against his imprisonment, okay? However, once he was imprisoned, he's not against that. He thinks that Lula must get out of the jail in the right way, okay? if he considers his enjailment right, correct? Ciro Gomes is a lawyer, okay? His specific aspect of law is constitutional and taxation law. So most of his speeches is about changing taxation in Brazil, because it's actually really huge. One of the worst, I would say the biggest and the worst in the whole world. And he wants to change that, especially when you're talking about banks. So he wants to fight, he wants to go, he doesn't want to fight, but he wants to talk to banks and cut a lot of the taxations, because he thinks that the banks are the ones responsible for the such high taxation in Brazil. And actually, pretty much of it is. Another aspect of Ciro Gomes is that he was against the two things we talked about. Andressa said about the new law that frozen education, health, any kind of improvement for 20 years. He's completely against that. So he says that once he is a president of Brazil, he will completely remove that law. Another law he is completely against is the new working law, the labor law that is right now happening in Brazil. They changed it last year, right? They changed it last year. So for the workers, it's pretty bad right now. So he's completely against that. So he said that once he is in the as a president of Brazil, he's also going to change that law again. Okay. He shows himself. Okay. So Ciro Gomes shows himself as an alternative. He is very. He looks really responsible. He looks really responsible. Every time he speaks, people really pay attention because he is a great. He is a great speaker.
Charisma.
He is. I mean, really political.
Charisma.
Yeah. Charisma, not so much. Lula is really charismatic. Okay.
He's very intelligent.
Yes, but he is very intelligent. And that's probably an issue. He studied also in Harvard. And that's probably an issue, because he's so intelligent that maybe he's stuck up. And then he starts saying stuff that people don't understand, or he tries to say, hey, you are wrong, and I am right, and people don't like that. Okay, so that's an issue about Ciro Gomes. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's hear about Haddad now.
Okay, I'm wearing red, so
Yeah.
probably you know what party I represent. PT, the Workers' Party. So, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is, I'm going to talk about Lula, I mean Haddad, not Lula, because there is a joke in Brazil that, you know, the Haddad and Manuela go to talk to Lula a lot of times because
Jail?
Lula in jail, right, in Curitiba, because the former president, Lula, couldn't go run an election, and then he has chosen Haddad to be, that was his vice president, to be the one in charge of running the campaign. And the other woman there is Manuela Dávila. She's the vice president now. She was from PSOL, that...
The candidate for vice
yeah,
president.
yeah, the candidate for vice president. She was from PSOL, the party that André has just presented. But now she is vice president in PT. She was, she's from my state, she's from Rio Grande do Sul. She was deputada, several years there, deputy, and stuff like that, and also vereadora. And I'm going to talk about their ideas then, Haddad and PT Manuel. Haddad is served as a minister of education in Brazil from 2005 during Lula's presidency to 2012, when Dilma Rousseff was serving the team. His department established the Education Development Plan, which allowed the department to intervene in educational matters from nursery school to postgraduate study. He was the one responsible for what we call ProUni in Brazil, that you know, enable to people from every kind of people, from poor people to people that couldn't afford going to college, go and study for free, you know, with assistantships and scholarships. One of Haddad's proposals are for Brazil fiscal crisis. He wants to increase taxes on the super rich, so that's one of the main goals in the fiscal crisis. Public security, he wanna tackle the drug crisis as a public health issue, on the contrary, on the opposite of Bolsonaro's idea that's killing everybody. So he wants to treat drug as a healthy issue, and with assistance to drug abusers and prevention programs at schools. In the healthcare area, he wants to increase the federal government's responsibility for medium complex procedures. In education, he defends that a movement called School with Science, in an opposite of Bolsonaro's idea of a school without politics. What else? And he wants also reform the careers of teachers. That's it, I think. That's pretty much it.
Okay, let's hear about the weighted Bolsonaro.
Do I need to put a picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this one.
So which one? The first one?
The sixth. The sixth.
Yeah, the next one.
This?
This looks good.
This? Okay.
That's Bolsonaro.
That's Bolsonaro.
It's what you
That's the guy leading.
That's what we represent.
Okay, you already know some information about Bolsonaro, about racism, about hate speech, about LGBTQ community. And I will read a little bit more about Bolsonaro, so you have time to questions. Jair Bolsonaro is a military of reserves in political Brazil, affiliated to the Liberal Social Party, PSL. He has been a federal deputy since 1991, currently in his 70th term, elected by the Progressive Party. He served in Brazil Army from 1971 to 1988, moving to the reservation in Patent, Captain. In the general elections of 2014, was the most voted candidate of the state of Rio de Janeiro for the Chamber of Deputies, with support of 6% of the Fluminense electorate. In 2017, it was considered by the FSB Research Institute the most influential parliamentary in social networks. In January 2018, announced its membership in the PSL, the 90th political party of his career, since he was elected Councillor of Rio de Janeiro in 1989. Besides him, his brother Renato Bolsonaro and 3 of his children are also political. Carlos Bolsonaro, Councillor of Rio de Janeiro by PSC, Flávio Bolsonaro, State Deputy in Rio de Janeiro by PSL and Commander of the Legion in the state, and Eduardo Bolsonaro, Deputy Federal of São Paulo, also by PSL. A controversial figure in Brazil, he is known of his political views and extremely right, which includes sympathy of military dictatorship in Brazil from 1964 to 1985, and his defense of torture practices by the regime. Jair Bolsonaro applied to the presidency of the Federal Republic of Brazil for the Social Liberal Party in the presidential elections of 2018, with General Mourão of the PRTB as vice, in the coalition Brazil Above All, God Above All. And as you know, my colleague said, Jair Bolsonaro is, for me, racist, has hate speech about LGBTQ community and women. So, and he's the first in the running.
Is he the only candidate whose like economic policies are on the right?
He's the only one.
No. So
But the,
Geraldo Alckmin, we didn't talk about
Yeah.
him, but he's also.
but he's like kind of
Yeah.
way at the
Yeah.
bottom.
yeah.
So he's
like-
almost the only candidate in the top that has,
Yeah, represented.
that has
Extreme
more
right.
The first one.
Extreme.
because he's extremely right socially, but also economically, and so people who, is it possible that a lot of people who have like they're like fiscally conservative are voting for him, even like, is that, because it seems like there's a lot of problems with his social policies, but it seems like people who want to vote conservatively fiscal don't have another option.
Absolutely, and I think economic crisis play a huge role in this election,
Yeah.
right? As insecurity. However, Ciro Gomes is a
He is.
center.
Is a center.
Right.
Okay, so that's like kind of where
That's an
people are
alternative.
are
Yeah.
going.
People are chosen
That's-
to choose for Bolsonaro for other reasons,
Right.
right? Too, especially.
They don't like the thing.
Especially because I would say that Bolsonaro tries to sell the idea that he's going to make Brazil another type of United States. Because he says like the neoliberal politics in here, he wants to give more room to companies to be more free. He wants to reduce workers' rights. So he wants like there is more competition. So there are people in Brazil that actually think that that's going to solve the problems, the economic crisis in the country, and there are also, I also think that conservatism plays a significant role in Brazil because he often says that, for example, having a gay neighbor devalues your property, or you know, women should like have like lower salary because of this, and so I think people actually are not, even though people are very conservative, that plays a very significant role. I think also the fear of violence perception or threat perception on the streets are being very significant to this whole political discussion in the country right now.
I'm just be listening and needed just one sentence on why he's good and he's number one.
Oh, I'm not
Just
saying
one
it's
sentence.
good, yeah.
I mean, why he is leading?
Does anyone want to try to answer that?
Like Brazilian Trump.
Because he's a big melting pot and negatively melting pot, and yet he's in number one position. When there are people who are more social conservatives, are ready to better the life of the ordinary people, are struggling to get to the top. I don't like Haddad or the second person. He seems to be a very good alternative. He should be way flying up on number one instead of this other guy that is very divisive.
But the thing is that there is this anti-petism, right?
Yeah, and how that's from.
People don't want this party, okay?
Okay.
So the people really have, because the history they have of this party, a lot of people that were poor or minorities had a very good time, but the others feel like they were not, you know, covered. They feel like that. I don't think that that's true, that's the case, but they feel like that. So they don't want, there were lots of scandals, corruption scandals in this PT time, running time, and then people feel like that.
Yeah,
It's
you're
really
absolutely
complex.
right,
But
yeah.
Yeah, you were right.
You know, why did Trump win, you know?
It's just empathy.
Huh?
Yeah, it's just empathy, that's what.
Other questions?
Other comments, questions?
It's just interesting how similar all the photos are of him to like Donald Trump. Like
Yeah.
all the photos of the other candidates are pretty normal, and then like you look at this and it's like, whoa, like it just.
Yeah, it is a copy. It is exactly the same speech.
It's a
You
model,
see things
right?
coming.
It works.
Absolutely.
It
And
gets,
he tweets too.
yeah, because it's like what gets people to vote is not necessarily logic, it's emotions.
Absolutely.
And
He
like,
hired people from Trump's campaign to actually help him.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's a show, right?
It is hired.
We pray for Brazil.
Yeah.
Wow, yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, those people are like
Yes.
brilliant. It's like evil people. Like they're making it work.
Tell us.
Do you think Brazil's large like Christian population, like conservative population, also kind of like socially as well, kind of like help? Oh, you know, this guy is saying this and this. You know, why don't we just not even looking at other policies, just kind of looking at stuff like that would help him?
Absolutely. And again, it's so contradictory, right? Because if you talk about killing bandidos, you know, you kill you want to kill criminals, right? And you're going to shoot in their head, and you have all this really vile and graphic speech, but at the same time you said, family is what is important, right?
Family and God.
Family and God is what is above
The
everything.
traditional family, not all the families, all the traditional ones.
He wants to save them.
And he says like, oh, because we have all these problems with the favela, an easy solution would be throwing bombs in the favelas.
Yes.
And, yeah, throwing
Yeah.
bombs in the favelas, so you would actually solve the
Giving
problem.
guns.
We can give guns to
civilians,
decent people, because these people
so they
would
can protect
kill
themselves.
those
Is
Muslims.
it's illegal to own a gun in Brazil?
Need to have a
It
license.
was,
You must-
Okay,
you must have
but,
very
but,
difficult.
but like most citizens can
No.
purchase? No.
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 So
But
how,
you can.
it's very
In
difficult?
fact, you can, but it's very difficult,
Yeah.
and very expensive, yeah.
But he wants to make it available like more easily, because he has that, the decent citizen has
You
the
have
right
to
to
show
protect
why.
himself.
Any questions or comments coming from you? Yes.
In your opinion, is there any important factor that has to do with the United States in this election, like a relation to the United States or support of the United States, or at
Oh, you mean,
any of these candidates have, like, get more support and attention from the United States, or they promote better relationships with
I see people using this argument that the United States has Trump is doing fine, he's doing good. So why can we have like that?
Yeah.
but like direct intervention of United
Yeah,
States in
I
the
don't think
election
not direct, just
or indirect?
like good relation with politicians, just that's
I do not have an opinion about, I haven't seen anything. Do you have an opinion about it? No?
I haven't seen.
Have any? But of course, right? United States would lean more towards
or any
right,
other
this-
country, like what, I'm not saying like intervention, it's like some kind of,
Support kind of.
not, yeah, support, or not even only United States, other countries, like we should have better economic relation with this country, with that country, with neighbors, or something like that, like to have open.
I've seen newspapers all over the world saying that he's a threat to democracy. That's what I have seen from England, and the United States, Spain, Germany, every
I just
big
believe
newspaper.
that big companies are actually supporting him, like international companies are supporting him, because he's saying we are giving more rights to the companies and less rights to the workers.
What is, is, like lumber, what are their natural resources that, like, are the biggest contributors to GDP in
So
Brazil?
oil, oil, gas.
Just in the northern part, or
No,
all
in
through
the
the
whole
country?
country. Brazil, a few years ago, we
So
found,
is it like-
Thank you so
pre-salt.
much for
Oh,
We
really?
found pre-salt oil that it could actually supply the whole world with oil and gas for 500 years. And they say that it was one of the reasons why Dilma was impeached, because she wanted that all of those oil could be only part of national property, and the royalties of it could be invested in education and health. But she
wanted to do
she
that?
wanted to do that, but she was impeached because international companies just like Shell, Chevron, like played a very significant influence on this, and she was impeached. And 2 weeks after she was impeached, all of this oil was rounded to Shell, Chevron, and other companies. So
privatized.
those were privatized. So.
So yeah, the market does control, right?
And there is a very short excerpt of the Bolsonaro speech.
So Bolsonaro is like very pro, foreign economic intervention, but are there other candidates that are just as pro foreign, like that are in favor? It seems like if Dilma really got impeached for that reason, then not a single other candidate is going to come and say like, oh, I want to nationalize the resources. Is that the case, or is there?
No, we do have it. We talked about, we have Ciro, yeah, which, people are voting for Bolsonaro for a reason.
Yeah, of
Not
course,
just
yeah.
for that. There are other
Yeah.
options in the right. Okay.
This is just your guys' opinion, but at this point, do you think that he's actually gonna win? Yes.
It's pretty hard.
How long
Do you
is
think
the
there could be
term?
like a 4 years?
And is there a limit?
Yeah, this is one beyond.
You can-
No, you can twice, but then you have to wait 4
unclear
years
now.
and try again.
It's,
Oh, and then you
it's
can
hard.
keep going?
It's a 50-50% chance.
Yeah.
As Brazilians, like despite all the corruption allegations and all this widespread corruption on all levels of government, executive, legislative, and even local governments, do you guys still believe in democracy and like the system that is implemented right now in Brazil? Like, do you think it will actually work and like that politicians will actually always have the benefit, not the benefit, but like the goodwill at heart for the people to work for the people? Or do you think in Brazil people are just like, honestly, like, we're just done with the system, we're just done with politicians, like, or do you think that's why he's like winning, because he's just kind of?
I think everyone is so tired with politics and unbelief of democracy. And we didn't talk about this right now, but I don't think any of us support any other type of regime as democracy. But a huge part of the Brazilian population does support the return of dictatorship because of this untrue charts about how violence is growing, corruption is growing. Well, it's actually a good thing that corruption is coming out, right? So Polícia Federal nowadays has more power to actually go and investigate those things. So I think it's a democracy in process. It's a very new democracy. That's what we have, a very, very new democracy. We have a 30-year-old democracy, you know? You guys have 200 years, what? I don't even know, right?
It's interesting though because of the mandatory vote that you guys have, it's like a totally different situation. Like our representation is really skewed here, whereas like the representation seems more, does it feel more direct in Brazil? Like do you feel like there's more of a like?
Absolutely, I think so.
I think that depends. That's like something that we could debate on because, for example, because of extreme poverty in Brazil, there is what we call vote selling.
Yeah.
And so people would sell their vote for example, for a food hamper, or for a chicken, or for
And there's not really like any way to monitor that. If a candidate goes into a neighborhood and says like, I'll give you this if you vote for me.
It's illegal. He could lose his running doing that, but so many politicians do that. They are not.
Guys, someone has to use the room, but we invite you guys all to maybe